All right, so good afternoon and welcome to our Georgia Summer Meals Media Engagement. At the end of this panel discussion, we will allow an opportunity for the media to unmute and ask questions to our panel guest. We will ask that the media digitally raise their hands and we will unmute you. You will identify yourself and your affiliation and proceed with asking your question. So I want to jump into sharing a brief narrative about why Georgia summer meals are so important. As you all know, summer is a critical time of the year. During summer, Georgia's children experience increased food insecurity due to schools not being in session, the place where they receive nutritionally sound breakfast, lunch, snack, and in some cases, dinner options. Prior to the pandemic, 1 in 7 children, that's approximately 10.7 million, lived in food insecure households. To the pandemic and pandemic related unemployment, an increased poverty rate has been observed. As many as 1 in 4, and that's approximately 18 million children, could be at risk of going hungry. And we've realized that COVID has deepened a pre existing crisis. This alarming data creates a case for increased emphasis on combining efforts to fortify the response to providing nutrition assistance. Numerous hunger focused agencies in Georgia continue to collaborate to close gaps that impact our children and serve meals to all Georgia students and their families during these critical times. So, joining me to bring awareness to the value of these critical programs are several individuals whose work is focused on alleviating food insecurity for Georgia's children and ensuring children have access to healthy meals during school and out of school. So, we'll begin today's discussion by asking each of our guests to provide a brief description of their role and the program they operate. And I completely forgot, I will go ahead and introduce myself. I am Rolandria Boyce and I represent the Georgia School Nutrition Program. I'll be moderating for you all today. So I'll start my introductions with Tamika Boone. Tamika serves as the Director of Nutrition Services for the Department of Early Care and Learning. Tamika, go ahead and bring your camera on and tell us what your division is responsible for as it relates to summer food service programs.
Yes, thank you, Rolandria. And first, I just want to thank you all for getting us together, collaborating so that we can have these conversations that bring awareness to our summer feeding programs and how we're serving Georgia. I am Tamika Boone. I'm the Director of Nutrition Service at what we call Georgia DECAL. And our role in addressing food insecurity in Georgia is by administering 2 federal nutrition programs. So the first is our year-round child and adult care food program, CACFP, and that operates in settings like your child care centers, your family daycare homes. And then we also administer a summer food service program. And so overall, both of these programs, the goal is just to make sure that Georgia's most vulnerable citizens have access to healthy, nutritious meals. Because I think we can all agree that, when school is in session, we know that children have a steady, consistent access to healthy meals. But specifically in the summer, the question always is, how do we make sure that they still have access to those healthy meals that they're accustomed to receiving? So our summer feeding programs collectively, and a lot of the work with our partners like the Community Food Bank and the Dairy Alliance, they help bridge that gap and make sure that children do have those healthy meals during the summer. So essentially, how does the program work? We just provide financial reimbursement to eligible nonprofits for each healthy meal that they provide to Georgia's children in the summer.
Thank you so much, Tamika. Go ahead and stay on the camera. We're going to continue to add to our list of panelists. Our next guest is Dr. Lynette Dotson, who is the State Director for the School Nutrition Division for the Georgia Department of Education. Lynette, please tell us about your role with the Department of Education.
Yes, thank you, Rolandria, and thank you to all of our guests for joining us, as well as these valuable partners. We all are really focused on supporting Georgia children through various food and meal related issues. So I am the Director of School Nutrition for Georgia Department of Education, and we administer a couple of federal programs, the National School Breakfast Program and the National School Lunch Program, and the After School at Risk Snack Programs are the programs that we do through our schools throughout the state during the normal school year. And then the extension of that in the summer is what's called Seamless Summer Options. So the idea being that we're able to transition and provide breakfast and lunch or a snack in one of those options to children throughout our state. And those are provided through our local school district school nutrition programs.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to move along to our next partner, who is Will McWhirter. Sorry, Will. He's the manager of youth wellness for the Dairy Alliance. Will you tell us about your role in promoting dairy foods and the dairy industry and the support your organization provides to school districts and the represented organizations?
Yeah, thanks, Rolandria. Hello, everyone. Quick intro to who we are at the Dairy Alliance. We're a not-for-profit organization that represents the dairy farmers of the Southeast. I focus on the state of Georgia, and my role is to work with school districts to help them find solutions to their challenges, oftentimes through nutritious dairy products, recipes, sharing innovative practices amongst districts, and then with various resources. So we're talking physical items like summer meal signs to get the word out, and then to occasional grant funding for needed equipment to transport and hold meals throughout the summertime.
All right, thank you so much, Will. Up next, I want to invite Jack Griffin on. He's the owner, CEO, and founder of Food Finder, a food pantry locator application that shows users where, when, and where to get free food assistance in their area. Jack, please tell us how your application has assisted families impacted by food insecurity.
Of course, and thank you so much again for having us, Rolandria. As you said, my name is Jack, founder and CEO of Food Finder, and really for us and our role in the fight against hunger and for alleviating food insecurity is that of a connector. So we want to use our website and our mobile app as informational resources to where food insecure families here in Georgia and across the nation can use our platform to find in their communities the food pantries, the soup kitchens, and the school meal sites near them that can offer them the free food assistance that they're in need of and are looking for. So just making sure that we really, at the end of the day, we're here to connect the people looking for help with the places in their communities that already offer it.
Thank you, Jack, and welcome. And finally, let's welcome Atlanta Community Food Bank President and CEO, Kyle Wade. Kyle, tell us the scope of your role in the battle against hunger.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be part of this conversation. So the Atlanta Community Food Bank is one of the largest hunger relief organizations in the country. We distribute food to a network of more than 600 partner organizations who then provide that food to food insecure kids and families across 29 counties here in Metro Atlanta and North Georgia. This year we'll distribute about 117 million pounds of food across that network, and connecting the families that we're serving with close to $180 million worth of food. So our work is to really help people get access to the food they need today, and also to enough food and grocery resources over time to really help extend their overall collection of resources so that they can solve problems in their lives and really begin to build a more stable future for tomorrow.
Thank you, Kyle. So welcome, everyone. Are we ready to jump into our questions for today? I know our guests are excited to hear from you all. I'm going to start out with a question for you, Tamika. Expanding the reach of the summer meal programs was important before the pandemic, but COVID-19 has amplified that need. Tamika, why do you think summer feeding programs that are provided both by schools and sponsored sites are necessary and so important for Georgia families?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. You're right. Even before the pandemic, there was a very real need for these feeding programs. But now that we are in this pandemic, the need for this type of assistance is even more critically important. And so just to provide a little context, just in our one summer program, we served almost 16 million free meals to children since the pandemic hit in March 2020. And so we know that it's having a significant impact in our communities and specifically in our families' households. So, you know, we see that with children being at home and more family members being at home, we're seeing household budgets increase. And so, you know, a family that maybe purchased 2 gallons of milk per week now maybe is purchasing 4 or 5 gallons of milk, and of course more food as well. And so we know that these programs provide significant financial relief for these families so that that money can be spent on other household needs. So absolutely, we think that these programs are critically important in Georgia.
Thank you, Tamika. Lynette, I have a question for you. When school is out, identifying alternative meal service is critical and it can be difficult. Thousands of children rely on schools to provide breakfast and lunch meals both during the school year and when school is out. How is the Seamless Summer option meeting the needs of Georgia's children this summer?
Well, thank you. As Tamika mentioned, you know, COVID-19 has really created some challenges. And for us, you know, we went from serving school meals to really the whole state being shut down with, you know, governor's executive order. And in our case, most of our school districts were serving meals the very next week, actually under what is traditionally the summer option, but obviously it was still the school year. So as you know, Tamika shared, it's pretty awesome that they were able to provide 16 million meals last year. And I think, you know, as partnership, we're showing how we've been able to meet a lot of needs around the state. I just want to note that since March 20th, 2020, since March 2020, our local schools have provided over 300 million school meals under this platform since school closures. And of course, they're continuing to do that this summer. And I think one of the huge benefits has been the flexibilities that we've been provided by USDA under the waivers to offer mobile feeding sites, to have pickup locations at our schools. These are even non-congregate feeding, which means that children don't have to stay on site to consume the meals. So these flexibilities have been tremendous in this pandemic environment and giving our families some really significant support. So of course, you know, our districts too, being in this model, they're continuing to provide meals this summer. And I think it allowed our districts that maybe hadn't participated prior to the pandemic to feel more comfortable with this process and providing meals in their community. So that's been a very exciting thing to see as well.
Thank you, Lynette. It's hard to think about feeding outside of the pandemic since that has been the most critical time right now. As mentioned earlier, COVID has deepened a pre-existing issue. So Kyle, since the earliest days of the pandemic, food banks across the country have seen a surge in demand. How has the Atlanta Community Food Bank responded to help fill the nutrition gaps that exist for thousands of children during the summer months?
That's a great question. You know, I think to start with, we think at the height of the pandemic, food insecurity rates had increased by close to 40% compared to what they looked like pre-pandemic, and so that meant that, you know, and that was especially true among kids. That among kids, that increase was closer to 50%. In terms of the increase in food insecurity among children. We have, at a high level, dramatically increased our overall distribution of food. Our distribution volumes today are 60% higher than they were before the pandemic began. And to get there, we've done a number of things. So we've, of course, had to adapt a lot of our core processes to be able to operate in a safe way in this environment. Some of that, of course, is loosening up now, but for the bulk of the pandemic, we really had to operate very, very differently. We have provided a lot of support to our existing partner network. You know, those food pantries and other feeding programs that we were already working with so that they could continue to sustain their operations. We provided them with financial support, with technical assistance and best practices to help them modify their procedures and operate safely. We've connected them with volunteer resources, and so all of that has been important. We have stood up new partnerships that allow us to reach new groups of people. In particular, we worked very heavily with a number of school districts, both during the initial months of the pandemic and kind of throughout the last summer, and we know that that will continue some this summer. We stood up last summer a really cool partnership with a number of restaurants and hospitality organizations around town that we call the Atlanta Community Kitchen, where we utilized some of those kitchens that were dark, that were not operating, to produce meals that would allow those organizations to bring back some of their staff that had been cut because of the lack of business, to produce those meals that we then, with our partner Second Helpings, distributed throughout our network to families in need. And then, I think the last thing that we've, I would say in particular, that we've done to really support this increased amount of food distribution is we've bought. I mean, we're purchasing more food than we ever have before, so that we could have enough inventory. So right now we're spending close to $2 million a month among all of our different sort of purchasing activities to get the inventory that we need to meet a much higher level of demand. So really a comprehensive set of things that we've done to respond, and that's allowed us to feed more people, more food, more often than we ever have before.
Awesome. Thank you, Kyle. Will, do you have any personal experiences you can share with our audience about the summer meal programs?
Certainly, yes. My previous work experience includes working in school nutrition at the district level, and one of my responsibilities was implementing and overseeing the summer food service program for the school district that I worked for. One aspect of summer meals that is always exciting to see is the rise of mobile meal service. So Lynette hinted at this, but we're talking buses, trailers, food trucks, ways that summer sponsors are getting meals to kids during the break like never before. And it's exciting to see that lots of Georgia districts, sponsors are taking advantage of this. They're making it happen. Creating this approach, though, it is a lot of work, and it takes collaboration amongst the sponsor, the local community, to see it come to fruition. But nevertheless, the goal is the same. It's feeding our community's youth so they can be fueled up with a nutritious meal for the hot summer months that we have here in Georgia.
I totally agree with you, Will. Jack, I'm going to interject a question for you. Can you offer any comments regarding the number of sites that have been advertised, summer meal sites? What are you seeing from your perspective in terms of summer sites that are popping up as a result of the need to address food insecurity?
Yeah, of course. So I know for Dr. Dodson, she would probably have the better numbers than I would, for at least here in Georgia, even though we've still appreciate everyone at the DOE and for Kelly, her great help and helping us make sure that we promote the summer and school meal locations here in Georgia on Food Finder. But nationally, it was just A, really impressive, but B, really encouraging to see the extent to which, again, when it was, would have been impossibly difficult for most organizations to see school meal providers, local school districts and state governments and state departments of education across America respond to the need that was presented almost immediately and very, seriously, this time last year in the spring and summer of 2020. And of course, that was where everything was upended. A very traditionally, finite window of summer meals of, from June, July, August, September across the country were made, into a year-long program to be able to still not leave families who relied and really needed the meals provided at school during the school year to not leave them to fend for themselves. it was really impressive. That just, it was amazing to see the response back then. But to your question and to what we're seeing right now, it's, again, on one hand, it's encouraging that we're getting back to traditional school year, summer meals being during the summer, and then hopefully by the fall, thanks to the advancements with vaccinations, the health crisis, hopefully the worst of the pandemic being behind us in that sense. The need is still there. The school meals and summer meal sites are still desperately needed, and we know, thanks to the historical data of pre-pandemic, that summer meals were always underutilized. So what can we do, really, regardless of the supply? Because the providers are there. There are hundreds per state, if not thousands, and the larger ones like us here in Georgia, we have thousands in Illinois for huge school districts, especially like the biggest urban centers in America, like Chicago, New York, LA, where you have hundreds of thousands of kids who really need these meals. The supply, we really, at least for our perspective, or from where we're sitting, the supply is there. That's not really what we're worried about. We need to make sure that still, regardless of where we are at the pandemic, before or after, we still need to make sure that these summer meals are more utilized because it's an amazing program. It's desperately needed, and it's just a vital service that schools and that our governments provide. What can we do to raise the utilization, make sure kids who are eligible and qualify and need it know about it? Because knowing about the assistance that's out there is the prerequisite for actually being able to take advantage of these services and to get the help that all these great folks on the ground are offering. So continuing to push on the awareness front, raise utilization, increase the impact of these existing programs is our goal, this summer in 2021, for the rest of the year, and for all the summers to come.
Thank you, Jack. So during the pandemic, school districts and other sponsors, food banks and food pantries are working to ensure that children's nutritional needs are being met while also providing safe, supervised, and flexible meal service. Lynette, tell us how summer meals are being provided through the school meal programs this summer.
Yeah, thank you. So we currently have almost 2,000 sites that are being operated by our local school districts. And many of those are mobile routes. Again, with the current flexibilities, that's given us the ability to increase that accessibility that Jack was mentioning, obviously raising the awareness, but we found that getting meals to the families has really helped that accessibility point. And as Kyle mentioned, the value of these partnerships, like we've had with the food bank being located, providing food boxes in tandem with summer meals, has just brought, I think, tremendous value to Georgia families. So that model, I think, is something that maybe can hopefully be sustained coming out of the pandemic environment, because we know that that really does bring a lot of value to those families having access. But I want to share just a quick, story. I had the opportunity last summer to ride one of the Metro bus routes. And so I was able to see their whole service. They were like 4 hours on routes, stopping in neighborhoods and delivering meals to families. And it was quite remarkable. And I was really impressed with the connections that the transportation department, and we know we've had support not only from these valuable partners, but we've also had support within our school system from transportation and administration, teachers and all, helping make these meals more accessible. And it was awesome to see the bus drivers in combination with the school nutrition professionals delivering these meals and making those personal connections, maintaining the connections that they typically have in the school environment on these mobile routes, and checking in to see how siblings were, and those sorts of things, I think, really translated. We know how valuable the food part of it is, but the relationship piece of it too, being able to see that sustained was also tremendously valuable. But we're excited to see that almost 2,000 sites are being offered, and hope to have a significant impact this summer.
Thank you, Lynette. So Tamika, I would imagine safety is top of mind for many parents that are considering participating in the summer meal programs. How is the summer food service program feeding kids and also keeping them safe?
You're absolutely right. Safety is still a very major concern. You know, a lot of the COVID restrictions are being rolled back, but many of us on this call, all of us on this call, are still very concerned about making sure that kids are having a safe environment. If we're saying, come get these meals, come to our sites, we're doing our part to make sure that it's as safe as possible. I think, as Lynette mentioned earlier, USDA very early on in the pandemic released a lot of flexibilities to normal program requirements. I think Lynette mentioned the non-congregate requirement or the congregate requirement. Basically, children don't have to consume the meals on site. We even have the option for home delivery. Certain sponsors are actually delivering meals to homes, and we are really stressing keeping, social distancing a real option on sites. And so we definitely are trying to make sure that while we're continuing to provide these meals and provide access to these meals, that we're still maintaining a safe environment for our families and children.
Thank you, Tamika. So Will, would you like to share any tips for families that are thinking about participating in summer meal programs offered throughout Georgia?
Absolutely. We've been talking a little bit about Food Finder. You got to make sure you find your local sites. So, download that Food Finder app, search for summer meals locations in Georgia. There's other ways to find it too. Got to make sure you find your site first. Another important tip is to make sure you pay attention to the meal service times. So you want to make sure you're on time. If you can, try not to show up near the end of the service. And I say that because a lot of these mobile sites like buses and food trucks, they have multiple stops throughout their route each day. And they like to be on time to their next stop. So if customers, they're waiting at the next stop and they're depending on those meals. So it helps when you're on time. And then the last tip I would give you is just participate. This is a great way to save money during the summer for your family. All children 18 years or younger, plus individuals that are up to and including 21 years old with a disability, they all qualify. Meals are well balanced, they're nutritious. You can get a serving of fruit, vegetables, whole grains, dairy, and protein. So why wouldn't you want to participate? It's just a great deal.
Thank you, Will. I totally agree. Jack, you mentioned a little earlier about heightening the awareness around the availability of summer meals. As a result of the pandemic, what have been your observations about what the community at large still does not realize about hunger in Georgia?
Yeah, well, I think it is really twofold. One we've already talked about really at the top of the hour, which was, as we well know, sort of, being, working in the intersection of, school, education, and hunger, is that really the levels we were at pre-pandemic were still unacceptable in terms of the number of children here in Georgia and across America facing food insecurity and needing hunger relief on an ongoing basis. So especially before the pandemic, we were at sub 3% unemployment. The economy was doing great, and nationally there were still between 35 and 37 million Americans who were facing food insecurity before the virus ever came on our shores. So that if that's the best we can do, then we have a bigger problem on our hands. So of course, from our perspective, number one goal, get back to pre-pandemic levels of food insecurity, as quick as we can to undo the damage done by COVID-related hunger. But beyond beyond sharing and communicating with regular folks that we weren't doing such a great job as a nation, as a society, with hunger relief before COVID. Other than that, what I want to share with the community at large to help them understand a bit more what the fight against hunger looks like in America is that it's not limited, and of course I'm not the first one to say this, and I certainly won't be the last, but it's important nonetheless, is that hunger isn't limited to any type of community, any type of person, city type, urban, rural. It's not limited to demographic lines, regardless of race, ethnicity, anything like that. Hunger is truly everywhere in America to some form or fashion. So that's where, being informed as a regular, just a member of your community, of your town, of your city, understanding where your food pantry is, or your food pantries, your food providers are. Most people don't know off the top of their head where their closest food pantries or free food programs are, because if you really don't volunteer or need the assistance being offered there, then there's really no reason for people to have that knowledge ready, because it's really, again, and these are the type of places where if they're out of faith-based organizations or houses of worship, then that's really what you think of first, and not the free food distributions that center may host, but aren't communicated or aren't visible when you drive down the street. Just sort of raising the overall level of how conscientious we are of having folks that there is really no mission accomplished after the pandemic. There is no finish line in this fight that we find ourselves in. So what can we do as the folks who are working day to day in hunger relief to help children, their parents, and families in America and here in Georgia to try and lift them into lasting food security? What can we do as advocates of those families, even beyond our day-to-day operations, to say with regular folks, here's the need we see, here's the need in your communities, in your towns, in your counties, and how can we galvanize folks to let them and to motivate them to take additional action, whether that is for the first time donating to their food pantry, donating to the food bank, whether it's the ACFB or in other parts of Georgia, volunteering at these programs, especially with still the shortage of volunteers and the labor that everyone had to change because of the health nature of the pandemic. It really will take all of us to move the needle on food insecurity here in Georgia, because that's just how massive and how interconnected an issue that it is. So it'll take a much more holistic, much more conscientious, and much more well-rounded, I believe, an approach to not just serve folks once, not to give people meals once, but to start to really get to the root causes of hunger and food insecurity, which were the reasons why hunger was still so prevalent before the pandemic, even when the economy itself seemed to be doing great.
Yes, you've highlighted a lot of key points. The collaborative nature of even this type of opportunity today is how we will move, I think, the needle forward. And we've also identified awareness as a potential gap, and why many families may be unaware that summer meal programs exist. And also this contributes to many families experiencing their hungriest time during the summer, and it also can result in long-term consequences and affect their health. Lynette, what is the easiest way for parents to find out the times and locations of meals provided through the Seamless Summer option?
Yeah, so actually both Seamless Summer and Summer Food Service Program sites can be identified. USDA has a great resource that gathers all that information, and they can actually, if people are interested, they can text 877-877 and type in food GA, and it will list those sites that are affiliated with the Seamless Summer Program, as well as Summer Food Service Summer Food Service Program. And then also, as Jack has mentioned, Food Finder actually is a great one source opportunity to not only see those sites as well as community sites and see the hours of availability and all. As was mentioned, sometimes that's the challenge, and we know in this environment there's some different service times than maybe would traditionally be present, so that's an important thing. And then finally, for Seamless Summer options only, obviously anyone can contact the local school nutrition director, and they can share the information that's specific to the sites that they're supporting.
Thank you, Lynette. So Tamika, how can our listeners find the availability of meals through the Summer Food Service Program?
Yeah, as Lynette mentioned, a lot of some of the same resources you can use to find our summer food sites. You can also text the word summer meals to the number 97779. You can also, there's a hunger hotline, 1-866-348-6479, Food Finder app, awesome resource. And then last but not least, you can always go to our decal.ga.gov website, do a nutrition search, and find all of our summer feeding sites listed there as well.
Thank you, Tamika. So Kyle, I understand that the Atlanta Community Food Bank recently launched a new text initiative to help families locate food pantries in their area. Can you tell us how it works?
Sure. So it's really simple and very similar to what others have already described about other similar resources. We have first of all, you can go to our website, acfb.org, to find help and enter your zip code, and you'll be able to find a feeding program nearby. You can find that same information by using our Text for Help line, which is 888-976-2232. That's 888-976-2232. Once you get there, you type in the word find food, or if you need it in Spanish, you type in comida, and then it will ask for your zip code and then give you information on the 3 pantries closest to your location. And it's the last thing I would add to this is, we've got a lot of resources we just described, and I think the redundancy of those resources is a good thing in this case. We want to give people as many opportunities to find help as we can, and we know that that's one of the challenges families face is sometimes it's not easy to know where to go to get help. So it's exciting that there are so many of these resources that are available.
Yes, I'd agree. So we're going to keep the conversation going. Tamika, if there are individuals or organizations interested in doing more to fight hunger this summer, how can they get involved with summer feeding?
Well, I would say one of the most impactful ways that individuals and organizations can get involved in fighting hunger is to host a summer food meal site. We're always looking for organizations, always looking for locations that are willing to distribute meals to kids. We like to say anywhere that kids congregate during the summer would make a perfect, 9 times out of 10 would make a perfect location for children to come get their meals. Just to give you a little perspective, just for our program, the Summer Food Service Program, we had meal sites in 78 counties. There's 159 counties in Georgia. So we definitely would like to expand our access. So individuals, organizations that are interested, if you know of a meal site, if you have a meal site that you think would be a great resource for children to come get meals this summer, please contact us. We'll connect you with an approved sponsor who would provide the meals for that site. So please contact us.
Thank you, Tamika. Kyle, I'm going to come back to you. What can individuals do to support the Atlanta Community Food Bank and keep meals on the tables of children and their families this summer when they don't have access to school meals?
Well, I think, as I mentioned before, we've dramatically increased our distribution of food, and a big part of that is we're buying a lot of food now in ways that we never have before. Our expenses right now as an organization have increased by about 60%. And so sustaining this kind of level of activity requires financial support. The easiest thing for someone to do to support our efforts is to go to our website, acfb.org. You can give help and donate us really quickly. We're a very efficient operation, and you can really get a tremendous return on your charitable donation. For every $1 you donate, we can provide up to 4 meals to people in need, and so that's just a great, efficient way to give back. Beyond that, we certainly have volunteer opportunities where people can get engaged to help us do our work. Again, go to our website, acfb.org, to learn more about that. Or you can connect with one of our partner agencies. Go to the location services we described previously, identify a partner in your local community that you care about, and go knock on the door and see how you can get engaged in what they're doing to help people.
Thank you, Kyle. So we're going to come back to you, Jack. Food Finder is seen as somewhat of a connector organization. How did you connect with the Georgia Department of Education, and how are you seeing this relationship impact communities as we collectively work to reduce food insecurity?
There we go. Still talking on mute. I'm a year into this, so it's always a journey. But yeah, the Georgia Department of Education can't say enough good things, because the Georgia DOE is literally Food Finder's longest standing partner in our history. Our first connection, I believe, was when I was a senior in high school. It was 2014. It was November 2014, about 6 months after Food Finder's website initially launched earlier that year as just a resource for Gwinnett County. We had a couple dozen food pantries in our database, and we were a resource to help students in Gwinnett County public schools find help with food pantry assistance outside of the school day and the school year. So it was that November, almost 7 years ago, and I was able to speak and present to even how, 6 months in, we'd already seen a lot of positive traction with Food Finder, speaking to the state board about our progress. Our goals at that point was to become the first ever statewide resource and online information repository of every food pantry in the state of Georgia. A year later, we achieved that goal, and ever since, I think now more than on 10 different occasions, the Georgia Department of Education has been by far not only our longest standing partner, but our most effective partner for raising awareness of Food Finder's platform and the services that we provide among the two populations who need it most. The students on free and reduced lunch and their families, who can benefit from the information that we provide to get help outside of the school day and the school year with meal assistance if they need it, but also the advocates of those children, whether it be the teachers and the counselors and the social workers at those schools across the state, who have really an unparalleled viewpoint into knowing which of their students may struggle with hunger and which students may go home every day to an environment where they don't have the quantity or quality of food that they need to be healthy. And most importantly, they don't have the food that they need to come to school every day ready and just physically able to learn. So the Georgia Department of Education and our partnership with them, without exaggeration, has helped us connect tens of thousands of Georgia families and students to meal providers, thankfully through even the expansion that we've seen as an information resource since we first got in touch with and partner with the DOE. I just checked while we were talking. We have now, of course, as a statewide and a national resource, Food Finder, and our website, foodfinder.us, has close to 2,000 food pantries across the state of Georgia and close to 1,000 school meal and summer meal sites, with, of course, each location having street address, hours of operation, contact information, the requirements to receive assistance, and close to 10 other fields of information per food provider that we have available on our platform. Then it's been a pleasure and a privilege to help address food insecurity through the lens and through the medium of education, because as we all know, they're really inextricably linked. And if we help students have the food they need, then we can really make sure that they are just their best selves every day when they come to class, and they can get the most out of their great Georgia education.
Absolutely, I agree 100% with you. I appreciate each of the panel members that have provided this informative information pertaining to summer meals and its importance, and how a healthy meal can be the key to unlocking a child's potential by helping them learn and grow, as Jack just mentioned. But before we close our conversation, I would like each of you to share an impact story from your program's effort. Share what that thing is that your program is doing that's bringing kids to a different space. So I'm going to start out with Kyle. I want to give you an opportunity to share an impact story from your program's efforts.
Yeah, so thank you for the question. And again, I appreciate having been part of this conversation. I think as I think about impact stories from our work, I think of a couple of instances that I would bring up. So one of the things that we've seen over the last year is that a lot of the people who have been coming for food assistance have been coming for the first time in their lives. They've really seen a huge disruption economically, had the rug pulled out from under them. And that was certainly true for one of the clients we've helped up in Dunwoody. Her name is Ruth, and she's she works in a restaurant as a bartender, and had relocated to Atlanta and had a good job and was doing fine, and then all of a sudden she wasn't, and needed help from one of our partners there in Dunwoody. And what was interesting is that Ruth eventually kind of got back on her feet as things opened back up a little bit and she got back to work. But she lived in an apartment complex where there were a lot of families with kids who did not get back on their feet quite as quickly. And Ruth became kind of the gatherer of food for a lot of those families. She would go to this same pantry where she was going and would bring back groceries for a couple of her neighbors who were dealing with a lot of struggles, and for whom it was harder to get to the pantry at times when it was open. And that just sort of speaks to, I think, the importance of community in this work, about how so much of it is about sort of neighbors helping neighbors. All of our pantries are essentially run by volunteers. And so this whole work in so many ways is about just people taking care of each other. And so that's a story that has resonated with me. And then similarly, or on a different way, so many of the people that we've been helping were already vulnerable prior to the pandemic, right? The pandemic has just sort of deepened that vulnerability. So communities of color, immigrant communities, low-income seniors, there are a variety of groups that were really vulnerable before the pandemic, and the pandemic has just heightened some of those vulnerabilities in a lot of really, I think, fundamental ways. And I know I was visiting one of our pantries where we had a client there with her two young kids, and I talked to her a little bit, and she works or was working, had been working in a local school district in their cafeteria, and that's not a job that is in a high income bracket. It's a lower paying job. And for her, with her two kids as a single parent, being able to provide for her kids required that she get regular kind of assistance from a food pantry. So she's someone who spends her days feeding other people's kids, and then turns to our network to get help feeding her own kids. And it's someone like that, who's trying to build a good future for her children, that gets me to come to work every day. I think that's why we do what we do, is to help that family have a chance at building the resources they need to have some sort of greater success in life.
Those are beautiful, very beautiful impact stories. Lynette, I want to give you an opportunity to share one of yours.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate Kyle mentioning that, because we do have a diverse group of school nutrition professionals around our state. We have 15,000 individuals that work hard in this every day, and they do come to us from different economic groups. And one thing I observed when I was a local director is that they truly gave so really generously, even to students in need when they themselves didn't have a lot to offer. And I've always been tremendously impressed by that. So thank you for sharing that story, Kyle. But as I mentioned, we are really committed, obviously, to the purpose of food insecurity during the school year, but also during the summer. And I want to share just a story of something that happened last summer. Like we've mentioned, we've been, running bus routes, providing pickup, and I've been amazed by the stories that directors have shared with me of families coming literally with tears, streaming down their face because of the unique circumstances that they found themselves in. We know some of that existed before, but certainly COVID has created a lot of that. But a local director shared a picture last summer and told me the story of a little boy that had come every day that they had their summer route running, and it was a little boy in Taylor County. So if you can imagine this little boy about 4 or 5 years old on his tricycle, and behind his tricycle, he's barefoot. So he has on little shorts and a little t-shirt, and he's got a little wagon tied to the back of his tricycle. And the picture has him riding on a dirt road. So he rode his little tricycle down, and in the wagon, the back of the wagon, are summer meals that he had picked up from one of our summer sites. And so because we have waiver flexibility, he had the ability to pick up meals for his little sister, 3-year-old little sister that was also at home. And so every day, the director told me that he showed up without fail to pick up meals and take them back home for him and his sister. So when I saw that picture and heard that story, I think that helped continue to drive me to work with our local programs to continue to find ways to make school meals accessible and make summer meals accessible in this environment for children across our state. So I always picture that little boy on his little red tricycle.
Awesome. It's those stories that give this work meaning. Seeing smiles on those children's faces and making sure they can have access to a healthy meal on a daily basis. That's what it's all about. So, Will, I want to give you an opportunity to share one of your stories.
Thank you. So the Dairy Alliance has provided, excuse me, a number of equipment grants back in the spring, and then over many, many past years to support school districts in the purchase of equipment that they might need to make summer meals transport during the hot summer months safe and possible. We've also been able to support some of these mobile sites, and I got to spend some time with Cherokee County, riding on one of their buses, going around and serving summer meals. We provided a grant to help them wrap the bus, make it look nice, as well as some soft insulated coolers, that they could put milk and their meals in for transport. And it's just very rewarding to get to see some of these areas that, maybe if you're just not familiar with, you didn't realize they were even there. But that doesn't mean they don't have a lot of kids and a lot of hungry kids. And one of the great things about mobile sites like that is that maybe these kids, they're stuck at home. Parents are at work, or they don't have transport. They don't have a way to get to the local meal site. So the mobile sites come to them. They bring the meals to them. And that can be a saving grace for a lot of kids during the summertime. And just seeing that in action, it's very impactful. And I want to give a quick shout out to our dairy farmers for being willing to support, their communities throughout the state of Georgia and all over the Southeast. Their generosity in equipping school districts with needed equipment to feed our nation's future, our children. So.
Thank you so much, Will. Jack, I'm going to turn to you to share a little story of impact story as a result of Food Finder services and some of maybe the long-term goals that you see for Food Finder as we continue to navigate this pandemic.
Yeah, of course. It's a little bit further removed from the educational sphere, but I think it's still relevant because it highlights, at least sort of my poignant example that I'm thinking of can highlight how, sometimes if we don't take care of the kids when they're kids, how it can cascade and sort of the cycle of poverty can really be left unchecked. But it was last year, April 2020, so the pandemic was really lockdown had truly begun. At that time, Food Finder, a month into quarantine, was servicing 4 times our daily average traffic amount on our platform. So we went from serving 700 folks a day across the country through our platform to 3,000. And that level of demand held true for quite a bit that summer. But there was one story of a gentleman, Mr. Kozla, who reached out from East Atlanta directly to us. So he didn't just use Food Finder's website. He wrote us and called us. And honestly, now he's was just a little bit older than I was. He was a returning citizen from prison, just got done serving a 5-year sentence, and he called us, and he was remarkably kind and gracious, but he was in really rough straits because, of course, once he was released from jail, he didn't have anything to his name. He was, really just sort of crashing with a few friends in an abandoned home because they didn't have any money for food or house or shelter. But when we were speaking on the phone with him, he was asking us for help and was just beyond kind and appreciative. And of course, we got him the help he needed, but it was just that story will always stick with me because of, regardless of how difficult the circumstances may be, there's always more we can do. Especially even for us, for Food Finder, having a small team, like me as CEO, our COO, we still get on the phone with our clients, answer their calls, answer their emails, and we're the ones who can help them get food from places nearby that are offering it, and that keeps us humble. So when you hear these really gut-wrenching stories, for people my age, for children, as have been highlighted here in the past few stories, or for folks who are disabled seniors, disabled veterans, people in their 60s, 70s, 80s who need help with food. That's where one of my ultimate goals of Food Finder is to move us from just being an emergency resource where, again, any time of day, any time of year, if you are facing a crisis with food, we'll get you the help you need. We want to move from only being an emergency resource and a tool for folks who need food now, right now, today, tonight, this weekend, to start to address the inequities that, again, can start at a very young age for kids who may not receive the resources they need if they never, get the help that they need as they grow up and as they move through the education system. And that makes it all the more difficult as they continue to grow and become adults, to help try and lift them up and free them from the burdens economically and socially that they may face from, again, deeply rooted, deeply systemic forces that are keeping them down. So it's one of my ultimate goals to have Food Finder and to just be one of many new social enterprises that are getting people the help that they need, but are also working to make sure that we can prevent people from being food insecure in the first place, rather than just go from crisis to crisis and helping people once they already experience hunger and food insecurity. So fortunate to do our part. We wouldn't be here without the folks on the ground serving folks in need, and with the food providers and the schools who really keep most of this nation's children afloat with food and the other countless different resources and support systems that they need. So we're still excited for the strides that we can make possible in the future.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jack. And Tamika, we're going to close with you. Please share your impact story.
Yeah, I think we've all heard so many of these stories about how these programs, these initiatives are helping Georgia communities. And I'm so glad that we're hearing these stories, because it just makes your work real and valued and important. One family comes to mind for me. There was a grandparent in Burt County who said this program has been a blessing to her family. 10 of her grandchildren had been placed in her care, and she wasn't receiving any assistance. And so obviously her monthly budget was tight, And so just to kind of paint the picture, Burt County is a very large, low-income rural area, about 23,000 people. So the Burke County school system is serving about 4,000 students through the summer food service program. They're going through the county, on the buses, delivering these meals. And this grandmother is a recipient of some of those meals. She's just expressed how, without this program, she wouldn't have been able to purchase the amount and the variety of local fresh fruits and vegetables she's getting. And so, fortunately, this grandparent, she knew about the program and found some value, utility out of this program. But unfortunately, like we've talked about already, many Georgia families don't know about this assistance that's available out there to them. So I would just say, my final takeaway is just to emphasize to parents and guardians to utilize these resources like the Meal Site Finder, Food Finder, locate meal sites in your area. And if you already know about these feeding programs, share that information with a friend, share it with a family member, a neighbor, because they may not know about these programs and very well may be the ones who need it the most.
Thank you so much, Tamika. As we close out the actual panel discussion, I hope our attendees really got the takeaway of the value of collaboration and just what it means to be able to expand our reach into communities. I think that's one of the biggest things, and the stories that come from it make it all meaningful. So this has been a great opportunity to engage with you all today. At this time, I want to move to allowing our media representatives to ask questions. You all have an opportunity to either raise your hand on the Grab tab. It's located right by your name, or you could just unmute and announce yourself and who you are affiliated with, and go ahead and direct your question to the panelist of your choice. So we'll give you a few minutes. If you're having any trouble, feel free to just raise your hand. We're looking at the attendee list so we can respond accordingly. I'm looking to see if any hands are raised or anything. And I don't see any at this time. I think some of our guests are leaving. Maybe they have gotten what they needed. I don't see any hands raised, and I'll give one more call for, okay, Rachel Barlow. Go ahead and unmute yourself and let us hear you. Give us just a second to get her set up. Rachel, can you hear us? I enabled the chat option for you. If you're unable to speak, you can type your question in the chat box and let us know who we should direct it to. She may be having audio difficulties. There we go. She typed it in the chat box. Okay, so if you want to go ahead and type your question in the chat box, we can read it back out to the panelists. So she's asking for a document that has all of the resources that we've discussed over the course of the session. I'm sure we can collaborate and put such document together. Do we have anything readily available that we know of, panelists?
Other than
I think you're right. Go ahead.
I was going to say, we do have some links on our website. Certainly mentioned the USDA website also has some information on it related to that. But we could certainly, point people out. Now we have a link to Food Finder also, I believe, on our website, as well as the USDA tool. But Tamika, anything else you want to add? I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say the same. I think we have our resources on our website, but I think there is value in us maybe creating some sort of, consolidated document and sending it to the attendees. I think that's something that we could easily pull together and with no problem.
Okay, so Rachel, as you heard our panelists, we can work together to develop some kind of document, and we have access to your contact information. We can share back out with the attendees accordingly. You're welcome. So I don't think we'll give it a few more seconds for any more questions, or you can unmute yourself and ask. I've shared the media contact information on the screen now. So if anyone is interested in the media contact information for Atlanta Community Food Bank, Georgia Department of Education, Georgia Department of Early Care and Learning, the Dairy Alliance, or Food Finder is currently located on the screen. Feel free to take a picture and keep it for your reference later. I'll check the chat box one more time. It doesn't look like we have any more questions coming in. With that said, I want to thank everyone for joining us today and providing such valuable information. We look forward to continuing this partnership and moving forward and working together to help reduce food insecurity in our communities. So we thank you for joining us today.